Hello and howdy. Welcome to another episode of Angular Air. My name is Alyssa Nicoll, your host for today. I am so excited to welcome our guest of honor. Before we get to that, though, let's give a huge round of applause and welcome to our amazing panelists. First, we have Justin Schwartzenberger. Hello, Justin. How are you doing this morning?
Hey, doing good. How about you?
Very, very good. Very good. I'm ready for this weekend. This week is like a roller coaster ride. So I'm like, let's do this. We're going to do Angular Air and we're going to start gliding to a stop.
Nice. Well, it's going to be like 95 degrees Fahrenheit here today. So I'm ready for summer. So
you have outside plans? You're going to like...
Oh, yeah.
Go
like just be outside in the sun.
Yeah, just imagine take it all like a little solar panel, like so
pretty much. With sunscreen, though. With sunscreen.
Oh, right. I always forget that, as you can tell. Our other guests. Oh, hi, chat. It's good to see you all. Our other panelists, I should say, this morning is Mike Brocchi. How are you doing, Mike?
I'm doing well. I'm happy to be here.
Hello, chat. It's good to see you all. Let us know what time it is, where you're watching from, if you're watching live. And if you're watching the recording, howdy, too. Howdy. So our guest today, I'm so excited to introduce Alain Chautard. Hello, darling. How are you doing today?
How are you?
I am so glad that you accepted my invite to come on. I am super humbled. You've been here way longer than I have in the ecosystem as well as just being a GDE. So I'm really excited for our topic today and to hear from you. But for those who might be new, the Angular community is picking up people all the time. Can you do a quick intro of yourself?
Yeah, so I'm an Angular GDE, Microsoft MVP. I've been working with Angular for as long as Angular has been around, basically.
You're like 0.1.
Yeah, I started at the very, very beginning. And by sheer luck, I was on a project, company started with that, and I got on that project from day one and basically started Angular. And then with AngularJS back then, and then when I changed jobs or working on different projects, I kept working with AngularJS all the time. And it became my entire career. And yeah, it just made me who I am today. So what I do these days is basically teaching Angular. So I do a lot of training, a lot of content around Angular. And I also run the certification programs around Angular, which we started back in 2020. So helping people showcase their Angular skills and put that on a resume. So that's me in a nutshell.
That's so beautiful. I recently met a new friend and I was explaining what I do. And they were like, oh, AngularJS. And I was like, oh, like it's very much when someone comes at you with that, you're like, oh, you've been around a while. Yeah, that was the name. So whenever you're like AngularJS days, that took me back for a moment to to learning and doing. I have so many questions for you, but before I just like barrage you and take over the direction of the conversation, I didn't know because like as you were speaking, I was like, oh, I must ask you about this. Do you have any direction that you wanted to take today's flow about your journey, or shall I just?
No, we can start with questions, and then it can go in any direction.
A big one that came up
talk about anyways. So
with your introduction, I was just wondering, since you've seen it all and you've seen the growth, and you're specifically in the teaching and advocating sphere right now. What are your thoughts and vibes about the growth of like Angular, the framework right now, and just how rapidly we're growing? Like, does that excite you? Is it difficult with teaching? Like, especially with like the context of, all of Angular that you have to look back on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think Angular is in a great place right now, and possibly the best place it's been for quite a while, right? I mean, the AngularJS days were great as well, because there was massive growth and adoption, and that's because back then, what AngularJS was doing was 100% new and unique, right? Two-way data binding, AngularJS was the first one to ever do that. And when you came from jQuery, it was like, magic.
No, it absolutely was. I was in college And it was like my final class before graduation. And my teacher, I will forever be grateful for her, because she goes, okay, class, you guys are actually for this final project going to use AngularJS. And she taught it to us. And I remember like for the first time ever doing a 2-way binding, or even like a 3-way, and like with the template updating, and my mouth just dropped open, because I just come from that jQuery world where getting something like that was like so difficult. And so for me, that magic moment stole my heart for Angular. It's so cheesy, but it wasn't being done yet. There weren't the framework wars that we have today. So you're absolutely right.
I mean, any developer back then, whatever we were doing, we had to do a lot with JavaScript, and JavaScript was in a way different shape than what it is today. Meaning, you would do something and it would work in Chrome, and then Firefox would be okay, and IE no, not happy. So we had all of these extra problems that we don't even think about that these days anymore, unless you're really on the edge and stuff. But that's how things have evolved over time. And I think that in the past couple of years, with signals, with things like standalone, we're kind of getting back that same excitement of, magic of Angular, where, oh, wow, this just works. And I don't have to subscribe, and I just get my data, and everything is reactive. Yep, that's what it is. So we're kind of back in these days, which I like. It's exciting for sure.
But as far as like course material or training materials.
So one of the big things that's always been tricky when teaching Angular is RxJS, right? Because most of the audience I would teach to are people who are full stack developers coming from a Java, C#, .NET world, where they are, they say full stack, but usually when they say full stack, it's more on the back end, right? And front end is something they do when they don't have other options, right? When they are cornered and they're like, oh, we have to update the UI. So
I'm laughing because of how my husband and I always say there are no unique experiences. And I just feel like everything you're saying just strikes such a true chord from things I've experienced. So sorry, continue, please.
And I say that because I've done it with hundreds of people all around the US and the world. So it's I know, right? When I go teach a full stack team, then they say, oh, we're Java people, we're full stack. I kind of know what to expect at 80, 90% accuracy. So that's where this comes from. And so, these people are not, 100% familiar with JavaScript and all of that. So all of the RxJS part looks completely crazy to them. It's like, what are all of these things? And all working in event-based and streams and operators. So that's super difficult to teach. And that's typically was a turn off for many teams. Like, oh, we don't want to get into that. That's just too much. With signals, it's a lot easier. And so that learning curve, I'm still changing my training materials. So I would do RxJS first and then signals. So people get the excitement of, oh, wow, that's much easier. We want to do that. But now that signals are way more mainstream, I do signals before RxJS. So we lose a little bit of that. Well, still when we get into RxJS, they're like, but why would you do that? Why would you use all of these things instead of signals? So it's but in terms of training material, things are always being adjusted, and I try to not just follow the latest version of Angular, because sometimes it's just too early. Like if I update everything to V20 today, it doesn't make sense for 99% of the people I'm going to teach, because most of them are still on 16, 17, or earlier.
Do you have a way of like balancing that gap for like, whenever you go and teach, do you try to teach them then at the 16 level, or do you still try to bring them up, not all the way?
Yeah, I always try to follow what the Angular team tells us, which is we should be, at least on a long-term support version, right? So I always teach the latest. And then when they come from something really old, like 12, or I had a class a couple of weeks ago, they were on V6.
No way, V6?
So, yeah.
Whoa, that's bad, but that's also like, whoa, I haven't touched V6 in so long.
Yeah, and the thing is, there's so many changes that, I mean, even I have forgotten about what V6 looked like, right? Because it's just so far away that, you know, for the last 5 or 6 versions, I can kind of tell, oh yeah, this came with 16, 17, 18, but back to 6, no, my brain doesn't remember all that.
The one thing I do remember with 6 is that was when the tooling had a major change. That was when schematics were introduced, architect and targets and everything else was introduced with 6.
Yeah, that was big because before that we didn't have NG update, for instance, right?
True.
You would have to upgrade manually and all of these things, and V6 and on was big for that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, how did you remember that, Mike? That's crazy.
I worked on it.
Oh,
He's got the memory of a not goldfish.
That's why.
One of the things I like with the
Justin.
signal stuff, and that is like getting back to having, you know, you install Angular, you use Angular, you know, as a dependency, and reduce the other external dependencies. Because when you're trying to keep up to date on, like, I wanted to bump from 19 to 20 as soon as 20 comes out, right? All these other dependencies that you have, now you got to wait for those to get in sync and whatever. And so it's hard to stay updated on the latest version of Angular when you have other dependencies that have to align with it. So it's kind of nice to start seeing more of these things come out of the box, and then maybe reduce that footprint of other dependencies that you need to use, right?
Yeah.
And the signals really open up a door to, like, you could do a lot of stuff, you know, on your own, you know, new code on your own to solve a lot of stuff that maybe you've used some other libraries to do now. It becomes much more simpler with signals. So it's exciting.
Yeah, definitely helps a lot. And yeah, what you said on dependencies, that's the number one thing that it's a message I try to give to every team I work with, that, you know, be very, very, very careful with dependencies, because that's what's going to bite you 1 or 2 years from now or more. And it's hard to get that message, because again, the team that starts with Angular, you know, they also learn about NPM. And when you open NPM, it's like Pandora's box of, oh, I can get all of these toys for free. And so, you know, NPM install this, NPM install that, NPM install, and you get like all of these dependencies, which on day one work and are updated. But 6 months or 1 year down the line, it's a different story. So that's a tricky part, getting people to, you know, not fall for any small fun components library that they can find in there and just add it to their project, because then they get stuck with V6 or V12, right?
Right.
And it's difficult to upgrade.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think once, like, years ago when Angular decided to go with a regular cadence, right? Every 6 months there's a release. That also helps too planning. You're like, hey, look, I know we're going to get Angular every 6 months. Let's start our plan. We're going to do that, and let's see how that impacts everything else, and kind of help us make business decisions.
Yeah. This is probably one of the best decisions made by the Angular team, because I know that all of the big corporate clients I had, like, you know, banks and insurance companies, they put it in their schedule. They say, oh, every June we do an upgrade, for instance, or June, November. And because the Angular team is pretty much always on time, sometimes, you know, we have a few weeks of sliding, but not months. So all of these big corporate companies, they can plan that, oh yeah, we have a sprint in June every year to upgrade, for instance. And that's a big deal. It makes a huge difference. Yeah.
Yep.
Do you often find that people during upgrade times are shedding dependencies because they're just like, well, guess that's not worth trying to maintain myself, so. Oh yeah, Benjamin in the chat just said that I broke away from third-party libraries. We went full custom in-house component library. Couldn't be happier, and now we're zoneless earlier than initially thought, thanks to that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. If you stick to the basics, you don't have any problem.
I think it'll be really interesting as we've got, you know, more AI in place to help us build code rapidly, right? To start seeing how that starts to unfold to solve these things that we lean towards dependencies to do. Now, of course, the nice thing about dependencies, you have some other team that manages and updates them, but the drawback is that you got to align it, right? But maybe as we start saying, hey, why do we reach for dependencies? Is it because we need to do something and we need to find a solution for it? If we start using AI to say, hey, go build me this, and it can rapidly bust that out, then maybe we keep everything in-house and it maybe becomes easier. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of unfolds.
Yeah, that could be a pretty good thing. Yeah, and I had an experiment like this with AI a couple of weeks ago where I was really surprised because, when you use AI for coding, especially with Angular, it's 50-50, right? Sometimes it works and sometimes not quite.
So, I've had success by telling it right off the bat, Angular v20 or Angular v19. Let's start there, right? And then it's like, oh, okay, now I know. I'm not going to do an input decorator. I'm going to give you the input signal and things like that. So, kind of tell it where you want to go.
Yeah, and so a couple of weeks ago, I had a very interesting experience with Gemini from Google, where I had an old AngularJS material table on an old app that I had to do the same table with Angular 19, basically. So I asked Gemini, hey, how would you translate this AngularJS 1 point something material table into an Angular 19 material table? And it did incredibly well. It just translated it like perfectly, and I was, oh wow, that was great. But the thing is, the more AI needs context. So if you have a very specific question that involves a library at a specific version and all of that, then it can figure out examples and go to the website and get things done. So that specific scenario was amazing. I could pretty much take that code and it worked. I think it even compiled right away. So I was mind blown. But yeah, for AI, context is everything. So the more we have, the better it can help.
Yeah, that's where I think of the more we know about Angular, we understand all the core bits. If we're really strong in Angular and what it does and how we use it, that conversation with AI that we manage can be, you really get benefits out of it because hey, okay, you did this. I wanted some router code. You did it, but I know that the router needs a little bit different. So I'm going to tell you, hey, just tweak that a little bit because I know where I want you to go. Now you just go do it. And so with that direction and that knowledge, as we build up our training and our knowledge around Angular, can really empower us to have our AI minions do what we need them to do. Right?
Yeah.
Michael was saying that Jerome Dev's AI on Angular can I use is really current, which is super cool. I haven't heard of that. Have you? I've been using AI a lot lately, and so that's really cool that there's a can I use with it. So I'm going to go check that out. Thank you, Michael. I really struggle with the I feel like sometimes we'll have a really good conversation. I'll be like, listen, we said we're going to work in v20 Angular or v19, what I was working with. But you keep asking to import the common module, my man. I'm we're using control flow now. Quit it, And so I feel like there is still a bit of just mental bandwidth that you're constantly monitoring, that something didn't slip back in or that we didn't veer off in a direction. But honestly, I'm so excited for where we're going. Just with AI and with with development. Does it excite you, Alan, or is it worry you? Are you, especially you're in the teaching realm right now? How does that look?
Yeah, so the AI trend is interesting because the main thing I've seen in the past few months is that when I teach a class, there's always one person who's going to ask me a question and then ask the same question to ChatGPT. And then they would tell me, hey, you know what? ChatGPT said something different. And they would bring me the answer from ChatGPT, which would be, mostly deprecated because it's a few years in the past. And so it would say, oh, you're supposed to do common module or whatever. No, you don't need to do that anymore. So I would have to correct ChatGPT from time to time, which I guess is good for my class because people just see that I know my stuff. But it also shows people that AI, the thing with AI is that what people tend to forget is that what we call AI these days are really tools that know how to understand language. Mm-hmm. They know how to read what we tell them, and then they know how to write. But they don't necessarily know how to think or how to evaluate if information is right or wrong. But the thing is, when you ask a question to AI, it always answers with 100% confidence, right? It doesn't say, oh, maybe, it's like, yeah, this is one page of stuff and use that.
Yeah.
So that's the tricky thing. Because it's always 100% confident, people might think that AI is always right and always knows what it's doing. But for web development, for Angular stuff, I mean, it's tricky. I try every week and try to push the limits a little bit, but we're far from. So when I read, oh, AI is going to replace all jobs in the next couple of years, like, I don't know. I don't.
Yeah. No, I kind of chuckle at that because just of the amount of not even code that I review on the weekly, but just content where I'm like, no human laid hands on this, like, and I send it back because it is apparent, like you're exactly right. It does speak with such confidence, but it can be fallible, and also it occasionally can just kind of have like the heart removed from it, so it can be very sterile sometimes, and so it's easy. I doubt it will be completely replacing. I don't know about you guys, but I just can't see it. I see it as being a really powerful tool to assist developers to be just like these 10x devs that they couldn't be before, especially as there are advances with AI, so that it's like smoothing out the wrinkles that we're finding. But I just can't see a world. I feel like if we gave it arms, that'd be really cool. I'm really advocating for this. Like, we got to get AI some arms. Like, just imagine it. It's like following you around your house and like, help me fold that for you, right? Like, just saying. Oh. So I know we went off on an AI tangent. Justin and Mike, do you have any more AI related questions? Because I'll veer us back to.
I don't have AI related questions, but I do want to go back to one thing that we were talking about earlier about signals and how they've kind of taken over in terms of replacing a lot of APIs, inputs, and now forms are coming with signals and everything else. The biggest question mark related to signals is there's still two APIs that I see it that are still RxJS based. One is forms, and there's plans and discussions about moving towards signals. That makes a lot of sense. The other one is the router. The router is so
my router motion. You're like, route. Trying to give myself arms,
Yeah. Very well played. I'm struggling to see the path to a non-RxJS based router that isn't going way back to like, hey, here's some callbacks. But just, I mean, I know that there's a state, but the way to be able to listen to those changes and act upon the events that are coming from the router in a non-RxJS manner. That's the biggest gap that I see in my head of moving forward with.
Are you talking just strictly behind the scenes, like because Angular is using RxJS?
Yeah, there's internal usage of it, but then also the public API for the router to be able to listen to those pieces is all RxJS based.
Well, what if we get a signal that has an array of all the events, and so that array just keeps getting modified, and then you use an effect to listen to that signal of the events, and now you can have that without RxJS. Done. Ship it.
Yeah.
Possibly.
This sounds like a weekend challenge, Mike.
It does. But I mean, it's more than a weekend. But
it feels like it's like just like at the very base of what you just suggested, though, against what signals are, right? Because like they're like time and time again, I feel like it's been beaten into my head. Like, we are not observables. We hold one piece of state. And so like the fact that you'd like be turning them into that, and it doesn't like break down the signal architecture of like who a signal identifies as, like
it's going all signals, right? It's doing that. You're like, hey, I gotta keep a collection of all events over time, right? So like right now, the observable that we listen to for router events is like, here's the latest event that happened, right? But if we probably think about it as like, hey, I've got a collection of all the events that happen over time. That's changed because it's got a new event on it. So now I just say, hey, I got the collection of events here. It's now +1. So the signal value is now changed. I grab the top one, the pop to the top one, or grab the top one, and now I know that there's a new value. I affect and listen to it, and now I just react to it or do whatever.
Okay. Yeah, no. That I honestly just am so excited for that. I really hope that you're wrong, Mike, and that there is a that there is an RxJS world without.
I'm not saying that there isn't. I'm just saying that my head isn't wrapped around it to understand it. I'm saying it's a me issue, not a tech issue.
I'm more in Alan's camp where he's like, it can be difficult to teach RxJS, and I'm like, I actually went.
Well, yeah, I think that RxJS is an amazing tool that has its place and it has an amazing amount of use cases. Being a dependency of something to learn to get into Angular is where that disconnect is.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask Alan, as far as like, since you're in the community and you're engaging quite often, has that influenced your work or perspective on Angular, like directly? Like how others are using it or struggles they're having, and so then you like morph?
Yeah, so the thing is, because I'm kind of at the intersection of everything, because I try to stay up to date with everything that's going on in Angular. So, following the conferences and the content from other GDs and the Angular team. So being 100% up to date, and then interacting with people who are just completely new to the ecosystem and know nothing about it or very little. And so my goal is really to be the router in here and filter what they really need to know, not overwhelm them with so much stuff that they would run away or get scared, but just give them the essentials so they can get what you can do with Angular, how it works and everything. So that's a tricky part of what I'm doing every day, is to make sure that people get the right amount of info, but not too much, and present it in a way that just makes it, maybe sometimes makes it sound easier than it is, even though no, that would be cheating, but at least in a way that makes sense. that's
I think not. Instead of cheating, I think that's just like the mark of a good teacher, right? Like, you don't want to terrify your students with like information.
Yeah. And a simple example for that was when I started with teaching Angular 2 and RxJS. I would do just like everybody else and talk about streams, right? That was horribly confusing to anyone coming from like the Java world, right? Because a stream in other programming languages is something you connect to and you just receive streams of bytes, right? Pretty much. So people could not visualize like, but wait, if the data changes on the server, then I just receive it? No, no, not quite. We use HTTP for that, and we make one request, we receive one response. So why is it a stream? So all of that was so super confusing. So I removed that word from everywhere. I don't even use it anymore, right? Yeah. And that just makes things easier. So simple stuff like that, you can only learn by making the mistake over and over again, getting people confused, and then you realize, okay, we are not using the right vocabulary here. And I'm not hiding anything or changing anything about not using that word, right? They get to understand RxJS, everything works, and we're not talking about streams.
Well, that's like a perfect example, though, of like, you're a GDE, and oftentimes behind the scenes, the Angular team will ask for even just naming, like, hey, there's a new API feature. Has that, have you ever found that come into play where you can like feed it back into the Angular team where you're like, not that word?
Yeah. So I know that me and Deborah Kurata is also teaching a lot. So typically we're always on the same page when you see with requests for comments, either she's first or I'm very like, no, don't name it like this. It's going to be a disaster when we teach. One of the examples of the past few years was with standalone components. The way they wanted to name the imports inside the component decorator, there was a discussion on that. And it's still one of the things that people struggle with today. When I teach Angular, they don't understand, but wait, we have to import this thing at the top of the file. We have to import it here.
Yeah.
Why? Why do you have to import twice, right? So when I see what's going to come up soon with, the selectorless components and this import probably going away, that's exactly the direction that we need to take, because that's what's tripping beginners with Angular. Like, why do I need to import twice? That doesn't make sense. Which is kind of true, but when you think about it, I mean, if you want to give a complete answer to that, it gets tricky, right? You have to explain, hey, there's a TypeScript compiler, so TypeScript needs to know about that. But then we have a template compiler, so the template needs to know about that. So we need to import twice, and that's why we have two things, because we have two compilers. But why?
That's where you ask the student, ask yourself, do you really want to know what's going on?
Yeah, exactly. At some point, I can answer that question, but it's going to be really confusing. So I'd rather not.
That reminds me of like someone earlier. Oh yeah, Benjamin was saying, I have PTSD when I remember the switch to Ivy.
Oh.
Like, there are moments, shared moments we all have together.
Yeah, like last week, I had a call for an upcoming class, and people were asking, hey, can you explain the difference between AOT and Ivy and all that? Like, why would you think about that now in 2025? I don't even see where the question comes from.
Do you think there's something that's coming up that's GPT making that?
Or I don't know.
Oh, maybe chat?
Because they were the ones that were still on Angular 6, and they were thinking about
That should actually be your first thing. Like, in order to submit a question to you, they have to just provide what version of Angular they're using, right? Like, so it's like the context.
Yeah, I try to get that, but sometimes, you work with companies and you do training for 5 teams at a time, and you have one team who has nothing. One is on 6, one is on 12, one is on 18. Okay. And so they have completely different, I mean, they don't do Angular the same way at all, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes training is just about getting everybody on the same page. Mm-hmm. So they all share the same baseline of, oh, this is Angular, okay.
Do you have to do a examination though to see all the different basically streams and here's how we're going to unite your usage of Angular at your company, or do you just start off with a very clean baseline of, if you're not here, here's where we're aiming for?
It's difficult to do that because there's so many different backgrounds, and teams also have, very often teams have remote people in other countries as well, and these people have completely different backgrounds as well. So yeah, my goal is just unification. When I do trainings like this, it's like, okay, I assume we all start from scratch, and from now on, we're all going to share the same baseline. And it works. People are usually happy with that, because before they would just disagree on everything. No, that's not how we do it. And so I try to give them at least one recipe on this is how you pass data from one component to another. This is a recommended approach, right? You can use inputs, you can use outputs. That's the way it works. You can use services. Because, yeah, one of the tricky things these days is that there's so much information everywhere that when people learn on their own, they would pretty much pick a random YouTube video, and then they learn something, but that something may or may not apply to them, right? And I think sometimes GDs, we are kind of guilty of that too, because we tend to talk about the latest shiny stuff, which applies, when you are at a certain level of experience with Angular. But if you're a beginner, you're getting into NGRX from day one, state management, maybe not, right? So that's the thing, right? People say, oh, I see all of these videos about state management and NGRX. Do I need that in my app? Maybe, maybe not. So now I'm glad we got the number last year or the year before, that there's basically 16% of Angular projects that use NGRX. So that's what I tell people now. It's like, you know what? 84% of Angular projects do not use it. So it's not like you have to know it, right? It's a minority thing. But yeah, we talk about it at every single conference. There's a lot of content on that.
You're right. There is. For being 16%, there is a lot more content than just, maybe it's because it's a complex topic, so there needs to, like, if you're part of the 16%, you need that aid. I don't know. That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's basically part of it is that, right? If you're a GD, you want to talk about smart topics, so you're going to do state management. If you're a senior developer, same thing. You want to show that you're a senior, so you get into these advanced things and then try to bring them to your team. But not easy, and not always necessary too. So my approach is always to be as pragmatic as possible, just because when you do live training, that's the only way you can survive anyways. Spending 3 or 5 days with people on that same topic.
I was going to say, unless you want to basically like move in and just like work with them nonstop, like there's too much to cover. On that subject, KK said in the chat that I believe Angular must be complex as it is, because it truly adds useful concepts that allow to drop all the low-level fuss, which I very much agree and feel I'm grateful for the way that it is, but I do acknowledge that, that what's the learning curve, I guess, for some of these concepts.
I always tend to say that, like, tell people in teams that, like, one of the challenges with Angular is that you can be successful in doing things totally different ways, right? Yeah. And so as a team, if you're working on something as a team, try and establish patterns of how you want to decide to go and do something, and then replicate that and stay consistent with that. And you really need that in this world when you have teams that are working on stuff, because you assign a developer on a team to go do something, and if they don't have that guidance of how we want to tackle it for this way, they'll come up with a different way, right? And now you got a code base it still works, but now it's hard for people to jump from code to code, because you can be successful in all these different ways in Angular. So it's it's something where, like, more prescriptive may be ideal, but it's really, you still want to have that openness. So just having teams that work on code, try and establish early what are your patterns, and try and replicate those and standardize on those, so everybody knows, like, this is how we want to deal with inputs, or that sort of thing.
Yeah. And that's actually one of the biggest assets of Angular that I don't know if many people realize that, but one of the thing that Angular does really well is to have a style guide and the Angular CLI that gives you a structure. And so just that is massive, because again, all of these big companies, what they enjoy about Angular is that they can jump from one project to the next, and the code base is not that different, right? They can find their ways pretty easily in a new repo. You can find components, you can find the services, you can understand the architecture. With other web technologies, you can jump from one project to the other. Even if under the hood it's the same library or thing you're using, it could be 100% different. Yeah. And with Angular, we have that, the things we have in common between different projects, at least in terms of conventions and naming and structure, is way higher than with other libraries, because we have less freedom in a way. Well, we have it, right? We could do things completely differently. But the fact that the CLI does things by default, and that we have, linting rules, same thing that's going to push for best practices, and all of these things make it a lot easier for people to get on board with Angular and then stay in the long run and maintain multiple projects. So that's a massive asset that, I don't think we realize enough in a community, but that's what makes Angular popular and remain very popular over the years, because for big companies with lots of projects, that's a massive deal, super helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
It has nothing with coding or signals or XJS, right? It's not technical. It's just the fact that we have that base tooling and conventions that's just massively helpful. Yeah.
Do you often find people fighting against that, or are they just like,
oh no,
welcoming it?
No, it's more the opposite. They're actually embracing it. I can think of 2 scenarios where a lead developer decided to go against everything from the Angular team. So like they removed the Angular CLI. And it was back in the Webpack days, so they ejected, ng eject. Yeah. And then they wanted to do everything on their own, custom build, custom commands, everything. The project, the code was, it was a disaster.
I can't even imagine. Like when someone in the chat was talking about rolling their own component library, that alone gives me enough stress to just, you're taking that on you, right? You're like, I will maintain this. Much less you're like, I forget the CLI. Like it just stresses me out. Whenever you saw this, were you just like hyperventilating a little bit? Like
And so, in that scenario, guess what? If you remove the CLI, what did the other developers do whenever they had to create a new component? They would copy and paste an existing one, right? Because you don't have the CLI. So you take a component that's close enough, copy, paste, and then you copy, paste 300 lines of code that you don't need, and you get tons of dead code all over the place. And the project was like hundreds of thousands of lines of code, but maybe 60% of that was not even used. And it was... So simple decision, remove the CLI out of the equation, results absolute disaster, because then people just forget the best practices and copy and paste, and then, no, don't do that.
on the reverse side of this conversation, is there like a particular mental model or aha moment that you try to guide people towards early on when you're training?
Yeah, the first thing I try to explain, the first thing I start with is components, really, because that's the essence of Angular, and showing them like, it's like a widget to use older language. Like, hey, you have this date picker. Well, that's, a single self-contained thing. Yeah. And we call that a component in Angular, and it has its own tag, even though, it's not 100% technically accurate. Selector could be something else, but I'm going to say it's like you create your own custom HTML element in a sense. And that helps a lot, because then people, I can open an actual production website and show the tags that are just regular HTML, like a div, a link, and see this one, it says something else, date picker, whatever. That's an Angular component. And just that is very useful, because it's put the mental model of, I can see it in any website right now. So I can go to a delta.com or my insurance company and see, they're using components. I can see them. So you can immediately relate to something that is concrete and is in production. And always, that's basically the way I do training. I always put people in a scenario where they can see the thing in the application right away in real life. So it's not abstract anymore. It just makes sense. They can see it.
I feel like you were very much team get rid of modules. Because then components really are the smallest unit of reuse, right? So that cleans up how you're teaching, and that aha moment that you get early on. I feel like you would have been in the background of like, yes.
I like the idea of looking at a concept of, all right, this is a pencil drawing of what the application is going to look like. And you can go in with a different colored pencil and you can circle things. Say, all right, this is a component. This is a component. And they could be nested and what have you. But to be able to take that concept of saying, hey, this is what the application is going to look like. I'm going to then break that down to say, all right, this is what my componentry, or this is what it's going to look like from a top-down structure of these different pieces. And that mental model of associating what you want to do with what you're going to see is, in my opinion, the fastest way to get from concept to implementation.
Oh, yeah.
But like this kind of pencil, right? Like an Apple pencil digitally. Like we're not talking like physical pencil, paper, printing out.
No, he actually printed out the
right?
DOM structure.
No,
and he's like,
pencil.
Oh, physical pencil. I was thinking back, like with Rob Wormald back in the day, he was a very big component about trying to get people to enter Angular by learning to just create a component, right? He used to talk about like, hey, can we have an entry point where we're just like, hey, learn Angular, just starts with create a component and see it. And that was kind of like this whole, where we got to, no more ng modules, now to like standalone. It starts to kind of open the door for that kind of teaching of saying this. Let me just show you real simple how to create a component and start playing with it.
Which to me translates, we talked a little bit about some tooling, the power that you get from a tool like Storybook, where you can take the idea of this component and control it and say, all right, well, what if I'm giving it this text, or what if I give it this Boolean value? And I can see those things change real time. And it may be something that may be 75 layers deep in your component tree, but you can work on it in isolation and see it is incredibly powerful.
Mm-hmm.
We are coming up to the top of the hour, but I had one more subject I wanted to get to, and chat hit on it. And I was deferring bringing that up. Get it? Defer. I was deferring bringing that up until I brought my question up for you. I wanted to know, V20 dropped. Hey, is there anything that you're really excited about? Like that's got you like pumped right now for the latest release, or even for like what this release is setting us up for in the future?
Yeah, one of the things that's exciting zoneless is definitely something big, right? And so having that now, you're getting closer and closer from becoming real is interesting. I like the technical aspects of it, but the teacher in me doesn't like the zoneless name, basically, because
what's wrong with it?
Well, what's zoneless? What does that mean, right?
Like, because is it too buzzy?
It's like the default. Like
if for zoneless to make sense, you have to know what Zone.js is and what it does.
Oh, right? It's like, you're absolutely right, because I explained this in a couple talks I gave, and in order to like understand zoneless, I have to take you all the way back to like, monkey patching and like way back, and then I'm like bringing the audience back up out of that deep dive. You're right, it is heavy.
And the concept of zoneless is like the absence of that. So it's like you want to be like, don't even think about anything, right? And then, oh, by the way, you have to add zone to this thing, right? So you add zone to this thing to solve this. Otherwise, the world that you're in is like, there's nothing to even think about.
And when you think about it, the average Angular developer right now doesn't think about change detection, right? Because it just works. So we tell them, hey, now we have zoneless. So we don't need zone, and it just works. And like, but it already just works. So what's the big deal?
What am I gaining?
The parallels between zoneless with zones to zoneless is very similar to that of ng module to standalone. But standalone, from a naming and a talking to it, is components stand on their own, and you can talk about what the concept is, not what it was. So I think there needs to be some sort of way of talking about the concept of what we're referring to as zoneless as something of change detection management or something like that. That's really long and harder to say than zoneless, but
I really, really, really pushed for the like terminology of, we're just getting rid of change detection. Like, that's all we're doing. We're just getting rid of it. And the team was like, that's too confusing. And I was like, is it?
No, we're not getting rid of it. It's just,
we are, because we're fundamentally redefining what it is. But
it doesn't mean it's going away.
But it also only matters to people who have already writing code, right? You have those two students, right? You have the people that are coming in fresh, and then this stuff is like, don't even know about it. Doesn't matter, because it doesn't, you don't even have to worry about it. And then you have the people that are like, hey, you got code that you have to worry about it. How do you get to the non-worry about it state? Right?
Non-worry about How do I get to the point where I don't have to think about you anymore?
Ivy.
Benjamin said zoneless is like we don't talk about Bruno. I feel like Mike did a I really need you to do this, Mike. A parody with Moana and the CLI. I feel like I need now a Bruno and zoneless parody from you, Mike. That would just really, that can be your thing, man.
The idea of a parody, maybe, but I'm not performing.
You're not performing.
No.
I'll get him on stage. Don't worry, everyone.
Yeah, there's a difference between a songwriter and a singer. That's not, we'll go there.
I wanted to say, so you brought up zoneless. Is there anything else though I wanted to say in chat, Abel said, who's excited about VTest experimental support? And then Michael replied to that, loving that VTest has explicit namespaces for its syntax. Now Cypress component tests can just hijack the namespace of unit tests. So there's some VTest hype. There's some zoneless hype. Anything else anybody wants to bring up?
As exciting as standalone and signals were for the framework, I'm really excited about resources. That concept of encapsulating some sort of process and getting more back from it than what you're putting into it is incredibly powerful. It's a nice concept and wrapper for especially things that you do repeatedly throughout your applications.
Was anything in that, because we had resource API before now, was that moved to, was that moved up the chain from like developer preview, or do you know like what happened with that in V20?
I don't recall off the top of my head.
Okay. I'm trying to remember like if we got more APIs to it or if something happened. I'll have to double check the logs, but that is one of it. It's also one of those, for me, it's when Alan said like, I try not to teach something too early. I don't know if it's too early to start implementing it everywhere. Maybe it's not. I don't know. What do you feel, Alan? Are you like...
It's tricky, right? Having the right balance is tricky. So for instance, I'm super excited about HTTP resource because, you know, the thing now is we're trying to push people to use signals, but then you have to use the HTTP client and it returns an observable, right? And that's one thing you cannot really work around. You need to get data from a server, right? And so HTTP resource is one of the things that I make an exception in my teaching. I try to talk about it and say, hey, see, this is the way of the future for dealing with async data coming from a server. Just because, to me, that's exciting just because it's going to make teaching easier. It's going to make architecting easier. And it's one more way to hide our RxJS a little bit more. So that's how I see it as something that's promising and that can help with, the adoption of Angular, getting it easier to learn and to adopt. Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Have you guys seen the new RFC that's out? There's a new RFC out for voting on an Angular mascot. Yeah, the mascot I just said. So if you haven't voted yet, two's the way to go. That's all I'm going to say. If you want to vote for number 1, don't even check it out. You can stay away. But we need more votes for mascot number 2. It's the
blueberry. Isn't it like a radish and a blueberry?
Fish. It's a fish. It's not a blueberry. It's a blueberry. No, there's like a shield chibi guy. There's 2 fish. And they're very chibi, but also Angular, and one's an Angular fish. And I'm very much like, we just need more fish in the Angular ecosystem. That's all I'm saying. I'm just putting it out there, like, go vote for number 2. That's all I can say. I'm dropping the mic. But there's also
waving the Matumbo finger, or is that a number 1? You're voting number 1. That's the radish.
Are you
number 1 is the radish, right?
Radish? Or you're just like, I need you to like.
It's got a little pointy head. It's like a pointy radish, right?
Yeah.
So we've got the Angular radish, the Angular blueberry. You got to name the last one. Link to vote for mascot. Absolutely. I will get that real quick. It's under the Angular. So where all of the RFCs are, requests for comments from the Angular team is under the discussion tab on the Angular GitHub page. Right now, there's only one that is currently open, which is for the mascot. But anytime the Angular team is working and noodling on new APIs, new features, they'll throw up a request for comments with kind of the direction that they're going and let the community give feedback on that. And so you can actually see all of the closed ones, like they're the locked ones, but they're all under the discussion tab, and I'll grab that link real quick.
Do you think we could get the resource API to return a loading GIF of the mascot of the API?
Oh my gosh.
I got a spot open right up here for when we get the actual mascot. I'll put on my shelf back there.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so with the latest version, there were a bunch of things that were in developer preview that were moved to stable. Zoneless was moved to developer preview. And then I think there was one thing. Was it the ng ifs, things like that were deprecated? I think so. There's like one thing that was deprecated.
Virtual directive, yeah.
Okay.
ng if, ng4, ng switch, yeah.
And then there's a lot of cool things with like incremental hydration and SSR that were bumped up, things like that. So definitely check out. The team has a little like video on it, but then also there's the blog post that you can read through all of what's changed as well. I did a synopsis blog post of all of my favorite things, but I got a little bored. So I did it all in wizard tone. So it's very high fantasy. So if you can't read wizard,
you say wizard tone?
Yeah. I was like,
right.
Here are the spells that were cast in V20. Like I got real high fantasy on it. I just was bored. Okay.
Oh, that was a scroll thing. I got it. All right. I thought those were like the Dead Sea Scrolls or something, but the wizard scrolls. Got it.
No,
okay.
I'm just watching a lot of like Dimension 20 D&D stuff lately. It's just
So like I have to sleep to reset them and do them again or something, right?
To heal,
Good
yeah.
for one day.
For heals.
And then
Benjamin said the
scrolls
mascot should be a banana in a box. I'm actually a little sad that there's no banana mascot.
I would vote for that right away.
We should someone put that in the chat. All right, I'm gonna grab the GitHub link real quick. Before I do, does anyone have any picks? Anything that you want to highlight for today? For this week? Anything that's been like amazing?
I don't think I have anything.
Okay. There is the GitHub. Oh, thank you. There it goes. It's popping in. We both did it at the same time. But you can just go to /Angular discussions if you just want to see the full list. But that is the exact number
61733
to the mascot. Yeah, 61733. But no, I am very. Oh yes, the V20 blog post. Thank you, darling. What happened was my mouse died, and so I was like trying to do all this with just my keyboard. But I got team members. I should just lean on them. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. It was such a pleasure getting to learn about your journey, your experience, your struggles, and your wins. And thank you for everything that you do in the community. I'm just really grateful to have you.
Great. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure to come over.
Go check out V20. Go check out the Mascot RFC. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye.